Okay, we're obviously hearing Bernie Sanders' town hall. I don't want to interrupt him. I'll introduce everyone in a minute. Let's keep listening. We're all assume you're watching on a second screen. This town hall is on CNN, and we'll do commentary as we go along here. And we're listening along with you guys. Francesca with an immediate true gambit.
I mean,
okay.
That's mostly placenta at this point.
The first question is about how would you defeat Trump? And he's ripping into Trump as we speak, as you hopefully can see wherever you're watching. John Iadarola, Cenk Uygur, Francesca Fiorentini, and Anna Kasparian doing play-by-play here. So perfectly solid answer is the first answer. Went after him for being racist and not living up to his promises in the campaign, arguably as important. Question on healthcare. First, huge. He said healthcare is a right, and he said it's cost half as much in other countries as it does here. Those are facts you're all familiar with, but the CNN audience might not be.
Wolf Blitzer is killing it.
He's staying quiet, so he is killing it.
Guarantee you Wolf Blitzer asked a question about how much it costs. Let's see what happens.
He's talking about profiteering though from the system and how broken it is.
Here comes Wolf, I told you. That's right. But you'd get rid of private insurance.
I love how he doesn't, there's no caveats, no.
Yeah, and he does a scrunch fist. No.
Yeah. Yeah, he said this in the other interview, yeah.
Any doctor. I like how he pointed to every facial feature.
Head, shoulders, knees, and toes, eyes and ears, mouth and nose. Who likes their health insurance plan? I'm sorry, I've never.
A lot of
met
people
anyone.
mix up their doctor as like their health insurance. Like
true.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Three follow-ups here.
He's going to bring up plastic surgery.
What about acupuncture? Oh, come on, Wolf. Missed opportunity.
He clarified that it's not, people don't like their insurance, they like their doctors or their hospitals, and they'll be able to go to any doctor they like.
You say 1%.
That is amazing. Amazing.
Thank you. Drinking.
Give me millionaires and billionaires. Yes. Damn right I will. They've been very restrained, but they couldn't help but applaud that line.
Yeah, that's nice. Uh-oh.
Damn. But what taxes do they pay?
How much?
Come on, it's already over. It's already over.
gonna begin getting the money.
He's like, Amazon made $5 billion in profits, zero taxes. That's where we're gonna get the money.
You guys know Trump was like, yes. Oh, no, wait. Like, it's the only thing they agree on is Bezos. Hating him, yeah. Say it. Drinking. Oh. Mm-hmm. It's more about gender. More about gender, Sanders. He's not a Democrat. There you go.
Yes. He's saying people are disenchanted with both GOP and Dems on a question about him being independent.
Yeah, he's not shying away from it.
Yeah.
Thank her for the question. See, you need a little more elbow grease there,
Roll up your
Sanders.
sleeves.
Yeah. Thank you so much for that question.
Why don't you ask Trump? Wolf Blitzer.
Oh, we're gonna see the other.
Yeah.
Ooh. He's got to cover up the big deli lobby. the big
Folk
pastrami.
song, all the prophets.
That is not an anti-Semitic comic. I wanted to put that out there.
Okay, he's saying he is going to release his tax returns.
Yeah.
Okay.
It turns out he owns Comet Pizza.
Oy. Okay. All right, so they're going to a commercial break, so let's do some analysis for you guys. So there was a number of issues that were asked in the first section of the Bernie Sanders town hall. Some were about policy issues, and he had, unsurprisingly, if you're a progressive, excellent answers. So on Medicare for All, he's like, look, we pay twice as much as any other developed country for our healthcare, so it's gonna save us a lot of money. Now, if you watch the Young Turks, you know that. If you're a Bernie Sanders follower, you know that. But most of the CNN audience does not know that. That's probably the first time they've ever heard that. And so that even foreclosed Wolf Blitzer asking about how are you gonna pay for it, right? But Wolf Blitzer did ask, I think it was a record breaking for Wolf, 3 follow-ups on, how about private insurance? You're gonna get rid of people's private insurance. And he's like, they're gonna have the same doctors, the same hospitals. They're just not gonna have the annoying insurance. So their card is gonna say Medicare instead of Blue Cross Blue Shield. But they can go to any doctor, they can have better coverage than they have today. So those were excellent answers, yes.
What I loved about that exchange is Wolf Blitzer specifically asked, well, this number of people like their private insurer, so under your plan, would they be able to keep their private insurer? And he doesn't equivocate, he doesn't give he's like, no.
Yeah.
No private insurance unless you want to get a nose job.
Sure.
Right?
Because it would defeat the purpose. It would create a two-tier system that would undermine ultimately. It's sort of like public school versus charter school. We'd create this, again, yeah, two tiers that would completely ruin the idea behind Medicare for all.
Yeah, it was just two more things on that. One, to Anna's point about not equivocating. At one point, he even said, damn right. Right? And I was like, whoa, okay, I love that, right? So would you take away people's private insurance? Yes, I would. Would you raise taxes on the rich and corporations? Damn right I would. And he said, look, there's 3 people in the country that make the same as the bottom 50%. It's not that we don't have enough money, it's that we're choosing to distribute that money in a way that is greatly inequitable to people, including veterans who are homeless in the street. And it's at one point, finally, the audience that's not supposed to clap just burst out in applause.
Yeah. We're coming for
I
him.
also love the, man, Wolf was really indignant. Like the idea that people might not be able to keep their plan, because we all know that people really love individual insurance companies, but they really think that they found like a gotcha. Like Obama said you could keep your particular thing, and then it turned out that a lot of people had plans that just weren't good enough. They didn't fulfill what the law required, so they got better plans and subsidies to pay for them. But gotcha, it changed a little bit. And that he's more frustrated about that and thinks that he can set up Bernie for the same sort of error later on than like Trump over the past couple of years. They literally threw millions of people off their coverage. Like, if you liked your plan, well, now you don't have any insurance at all. And that's a slightly different thing than we're gonna upgrade you to Medicare that you're gonna enjoy more, that's gonna have more benefits, take care of more of your
And then
needs.
he was challenged on 3 different issues that are tougher. One, why should a young person of color, support your campaign? It's a rough way of summarizing the question that was asked. And he said, look, what did I do in 2016, 2018? I went around the country fighting for those women of color who won. And I can attest to that. And if you watch the Young Turks, you can attest to it. You saw it with your own eyes. He came on here with Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, fighting for other candidates who were, generally speaking, way younger, more women, more people of color, and he helped them win. That's a good track record. He talked about our revolution as well, yes.
Yeah, the only problem with that answer was I think that the initial question was about what are you going to do about the sexual assault allegations and in your campaign in 2016. And at that moment, I'm glad that Blitzer followed up because he then pressed him, like, how do you really feel? And he's like, it hurt me, it made me feel awful. And he initially didn't say that. And
one last thing, Wolf Blitzer challenged him on his tax returns, and he should release them. Wolf was right to challenge him on that, and he said we will release them. So we'll see when he does.
There you go. Thank you. There you go. Oh, Jesus.
That's crazy. That was awesome. That was awesome.
Ooh, nice. So much shade. Oh,
So good.
not just conservatives. Everyone failed to ask him how he would pay for his wall or that.
It's actually 2 trillion now.
Thank you. Thank you for bringing that. That is so critical that he brought up the tax break. Wow.
Childcare system.
Universal symbol for child.
I guarantee you the conservatives flip out over that football answer. See,
Oh,
they
yeah.
they hate football. That's how liberals are.
War on
They're gonna
football.
cancel
They hate football.
Unlike
when it
our
comes
president
to-
What did she say? Sorry.
asking about socialism.
Okay.
Good.
I feel like he's trolling Wolf,
He's
and I
so
love
trolling
it.
Wolf. I don't like it. There you go. Wow.
Sounds like
Nice.
Venezuela.
It really is. Security. I can't believe he said the word security. That's excellent. Ooh. One lonely clap. A
to hear
couple
some more
more.
I think there's some
Couple
Human
more
rights.
clapping. Uh-oh.
Human rights.
There
Thank
you go.
you.
Thank you. Yes.
That one was for you, Johnny Pie.
It's for all of us.
Thank you.
Oh, they're gonna ask about it.
Thank you. All the same. All the same. All the same. Kind of. Yeah. Nice.
This dude
Gas.
does not hesitate.
I know, he's so on brand. Talk about your grandchildren.
Yeah. So the first companies he mentioned that he was going to go after was coal companies. Just does not blink, man. Most Democrats would be scared to death to say that.
Yeah.
You know what would be amazing if he said, I actually really like Elizabeth Warren's plan on this issue.
Right.
That like nobody ever does that. And that would be wonderfully magnanimous and true.
We should.
He only thanks people when he likes the question.
He's being honest at least. Thank you for punching me in the face.
Yeah.
He's got to have a better turn of phrase.
I would have
than
said we
that,
can't
but-
afford not to do that.
Yes.
But yeah.
We
Close.
can't not afford to do that.
It's funny how
can't
much
not
we're
afford.
nitpicking because his ideas are so good, you know?
Right.
Oh, I've already written him off. I just found out he's not a Democrat.
Yeah. Ugh.
I'm not gonna vote. He's not a-
That's a good
That's
question.
a good question.
Unwilling to accept what?
I'm willing
Facts.
to, yeah.
Oh, facts. Yeah.
Here it goes again.
Good. Nice.
So does their tax returns.
They pay their taxes, they're gonna find that out.
Nice.
Man, he's not playing. What was the first thing?
It goes beep.
Okay.
Agreed. That's step one. Yes.
I think he really is branding himself already as the most, not just most effective, but most like passionate, nonstop critic of the president.
Yeah.
Like the CBS interview, this.
Racist, fraud,
Yeah,
sexist.
he's pulling no punches.
Yeah.
Like Cory Booker asked about whether he's a racist. Is like, I can't really see in anyone's heart, but
All right.
he implied he's a racist, but.
Okay, so they're going to a break. Let's do some more analysis, okay? So again, in this segment, we had some substantive issues about student debt. He said not only is he going to do free tuition in public colleges, but that they would, quote, substantially lower student debt that currently exists. So he didn't get into a lot of details about how to do that. He did talk about bringing down some monstrous interest rates that students pay. When asked about private colleges, which are different obviously than the public college plan that he's talking about, Wolf Blitzer asked him about that. He's like, look, they could do a lot of different things. Do they need football stadiums that large? Do they need to pay their football coaches so much more than they pay their teachers? Progressives might love that kind of talk. That'll probably lead on Fox News tomorrow with Bernie Sanders planning on canceling college football, right? So of course he said
But already
no such thing.
you see the interrogation of the bold plan, right? Bold plan, tuition free. Bold plan, let's reduce tuition in private colleges. And he's being asked, as I think candidates should be asked, how would you do that? And his answer was okay. I think it could get better. But the fact that 2016, how are you gonna pay for your wall? Mexico, okay, Jake Tapper, go to the next question. Like, we never interrogate how the right plans to pay for their right-wing populism. And so I think it's good. Obviously, there's a little bit, sometimes it's unfairly doled out to the left, but.
So that's a great point, and in fact, even Bernie got a fact wrong here. He said, look, people don't ask the Republicans how they paid for that $1 trillion tax cut. Now it turns out it's not $1 trillion. The latest numbers are 1.9 trillion. So it'd be in essence 2 trillion. He got that wrong. Second thing, and he talked about economic rights, not just the rights that we have in the Constitution now, freedom of press, et cetera. And he said Roosevelt talked about that all the way back in 1944. There's no reason why we shouldn't have that conversation again
was
today.
He a Democrat? I guess he was a Democrat.
Yeah.
It's almost like he's moving the Democratic Party back to its New Deal self.
That's right. He could have done a nice little joke there. I should know because I was there when he introduced it, right?
True.
But he didn't do that. But also his tone in taking on Trump was much more aggressive than the other candidates, which is great. He said it's a disgrace and an embarrassment that our president doesn't believe in science. He called him racist, homophobic. He said when asked how he would challenge him in the debates, he said he's going to bring along a lie detector test, and that he said he's going to expose him for the fraud that he is.
Yeah.
I mean, that's some strong language, and I love it.
I think one of the advantages he's demonstrating here is he likes to point out, everyone points out, that the big plans that everyone laughed at a couple years ago, many people are at least pretending they support. Some actually do, some are just implying it. So you might think that some of his advantage has been nullified, but not only is he a better, more effective and authentic communicator for those policies, but he is the only one who's willing to push for them while also identifying how we got into this situation and which vested economic interests are keeping it the way it is. Right. So some might say, we should have Medicare for all, or we should have a Green New Deal, but they're not going to go after the coal companies or the insurance companies in the same way that he will. And I think that rings much more true to the people hearing than those who hear just a candidate who's like, I like it, you know?
Yeah, and he specifically called out the coal companies first. He said, I'm going to go after the power of the coal companies. Crazy. Most Democrats are scared to death. Oh my God, Hillary Clinton said something about coal and then they attacked her for it. And Donald Trump's always talking about how he's going to bring coal back. Well, he didn't, and that's just not true. And Bernie doesn't mind actually saying the things he's going to do and being aggressive about it.
Talked about gas, which implies fracking, I think. To me, the best question on this segment was democratic socialism. He basically used it as an opportunity to say American democracy needs more economic rights, and I think that was excellent. No Facebook ads.
No Facebook.
Yeah. Ooh.
That's good. I would like to see more specifics on cybersecurity and stuff like that, but that was good.
They're spending a lot of money, John, okay?
Oh, good.
It's an interesting question.
Very interesting.
Really looking forward to the answer here. I don't know what he's going to say. But I'm not thanking you for it.
Thank you. Thank you. That's great.
I knew Wolf was
clear.
going to follow up on that.
That was a good answer.
Oh God, what a horrible question. What a dumb, sorry. Talk about Trump.
This is too nuanced for mainstream media.
Yeah, totally.
That's a Fox question, man.
Thank
Yes.
you.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah. Everywhere. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Yes. Fuck yeah.
They're covering a lot of ground.
Nice.
Yes.
Oh, second applause break.
He's going to thank her for the question.
I think so.
He's not going to thank her. I'm curious about his answer. I don't know.
Yeah. Yep.
But I hope he answers the actual question of, would you deconstruct the wall? I don't think I would, to be honest. I think it's kind of a political gimmick that Beto threw out
Well,
there.
we could like spray paint it and like make it purdy or something, or do a thing with it.
Yeah, get Banksy out there.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Oh, there's
Okay.
some wooing.
Yes.
Are they allowed to woo?
Well, they are, whether they're allowed to or not. Okay, so
looks happy.
so this was the third segment of the town hall for Bernie Sanders on CNN. We're analyzing it as we go live. We'll share it with you guys as later as well on YouTube and Facebook. And so in this segment, they asked him about Venezuela, and it was a aggressive question by I think someone that was a student. all fair, nothing wrong with that. And I was curious about what his answer was going to be. And he said, look, Maduro, I don't believe won free and fair elections. But at the same time, we have a terrible history of intervention in Latin America, where we've deposed democratically elected leaders as well. He said, I fought against the Iraq War as much as I could possibly do when I was in Congress, because I thought that intervention was a bad idea. Then he turned around and said, how come we don't have the same standard for Venezuela and Saudi Arabia?
Thank you, yeah.
And that was huge, and especially when he said, when Wolf Blitzer pressed him and said,
is he a dictator?
Yeah, is Maduro a dictator? Why won't you call him a dictator? And he's like, look, they still have democratic infrastructure in Venezuela. I don't believe the last elections were fair, so that's a fair distinction. He said, but when's the last time we had elections in Saudi Arabia? And that's when we all went like, boom, right?
It's
that's
such
exactly
a bizarre question, like a Fox News question of like, but will you condemn? But do you call this person a dictator? It's like this semantics political.
Yeah.
That says like that's nothing but nothing.
That doesn't really matter in any way when you really think about it. So, look, if you're genuinely concerned about the humanitarian crisis in Venezuela, you should be, right? But the US government can't pick and choose which countries it's concerned about and make that argument in an effort to push for regime change, which is what we're seeing right now.
Also, whether or not Sanders calls him a dictator means nothing.
It means nothing.
He spelled out the things that Maduro is doing and the plight of Venezuelan people right now. So,
but yeah, again, the thing that I love the most was that he's pointing out the hypocrisy. We support dictators all across the world.
Sure.
So why this one? And then in terms of semantics. In the first segment, we didn't get to talk about this. We've been analyzing it as we go along, but they asked him, but you're not technically a Democrat, you're an independent. To me, that is a telltale sign of whether you care about policy or not. So if you're one of those people like, yeah, but do you have a D on your helmet?
Yeah.
I don't know why you care. I just, for the life of me, I can't figure out why you care. His policies are more progressive. If you don't like that, that's fair. Say, hey, you know what? I don't want a progressive. I want a moderate or a conservative Democrat. Okay, but why does it matter if he's an independent or a Democrat as long as he is supporting the more democratic positions or the more progressive positions? And so he parried that perfectly well too by saying, by the way, a really good point, which is that he's like, I'm in Democratic leadership in the Senate.
Yeah. So I want to jump in on that. I think for a lot of Americans, when they think of independence, they think of people in the middle. Right? They don't think of people who might be to the left of Democrats or to the right of Republicans, whatever it is. They just automatically assume, oh, this is a person who's in the middle. But Bernie, I think, represents himself or has referred to himself as an independent because he doesn't feel that the Democratic Party has gone far enough on some of these issues, especially economic issues. And so I actually don't mind that question was asked because he did a good job explaining it. And I hope that helps people understand why it is that he decided to claim ownership of an independent as opposed to a Democrat. But nonetheless, I do agree with you, Jake. A lot of people vote based on party lines, and it's a way of voting, making voting
mindless.
Simplistic if you don't have time to look into the policy issues.
So thank you for the question.
No, let's get you going. Let's get you going.
Oh,
wow.
Ooh, the hole in this.
Don't hurt him, Bernie. Screw it.
No, hurt him.
Nice. Nice point. Concrete, super concrete.
Jesus.
Oh, wow.
Damn.
Ooh.
Ooh. Wow.
That was fire.
Super strong.
That was fire.
That was amazing.
Amazing.
Wow.
Thank you.
39.
Nice. Yeah, tied and yeah.
Jesus. I'm really happy you brought that up.
Yeah. Yes. Jinx. Oh.
I got a big applause. Okay, nice job.
That was a good answer.
Yeah, tough question, great answer. And I like that he didn't pull his punches either. Like he's like, no, I reject your first
Yeah,
one.
that was strong.
Yeah.
We're talking about reparations on CNN. I love this.
It's pretty amazing.
That's what he's been talking about.
Oh, here we go again. So
Wolf is having a tough time with reading comprehension.
but he's not quite answering the question, to be fair.
He's asking multiple follow-ups. If he came out and said, I do support it, the next follow-up would be, then how are you gonna pay for it?
But also, he makes a good point. What do you mean specifically by reparations?
Oh, statehood. Damn, there's some deep cuts, deep progressive cuts here.
No universal basic income yet.
Yeah,
but we'll
okay,
see.
yeah.
Man, that question had a constituency in the, in
I
the
know.
room. They're doing it in Washington, D.C.
That's it? Wow. That sounds kind of awesome. I think I might move there.
Ooh.
Oh, wow.
So no, that's not that interesting. That's
good.
Almost all the Democrats support statehood. That's a layup.
That's a good point. Spike Lee reference.
I'm pretty sure he didn't mean that. That's not true.
Sounds good though.
I reject that premise. There you go.
Yes.
Oklahoma. Disappearing cars. Hashtag.
Damn.
I wonder when they're going to ask him to name names on Democratic side when he says Congress is owned by the pharmaceutical industry, et cetera. We'll talk more about that in the postgame.
Well, he kind of just said that. Yeah.
Wolf isn't paying attention.
Best line of the night.
Headline tomorrow.
Best.
I am very worried about artificial intelligence. I'm very worried about lack of intelligence from the president.
Rise of the machine.
This is such an important point.
Yeah. Yes.
Yeah. Ooh.
I guarantee you that a lot of Democrats will criticize him for that answer.
He did call them racist though, and sexist.
He said some of them are, most of them are not. So that's probably what he'll get criticism for, my guess.
Good luck. Have you been on Twitter? Nice job.
So
Wolf.
the town hall's over. I want to analyze the last segment and including the interesting, perhaps controversial answer on reparations and whether Donald Trump supporters are racist or sexist and the severity with which he took on the pharmaceutical companies. But as we promised you guys, we're going to do that for the members. And now that as we switch over to the analysis portion of our program, if you're not a member and you want to hear that, that's okay. You can sign up for a free week and try it out and see if you like it. And if you want, you can just go to tyt.com/join and become a member right away. You've got a couple different levels of membership that you could go with. But if you want, go to tyt.com/trial to try out Young Turks membership for a week. We'll also be covering the Michael Cohen hearings, and we'll be doing that live, and then analysis for members as well. So we're gonna take a real quick break here and come back from the members, talk about some of those very controversial issues that were brought up in the last segment. And then we'll do an overall analysis and we'll take some of your comments as well. So we'll see the members in a minute. All right, we're back for Young Turks members. We're doing analysis of the Bernie Sanders town hall. We're gonna go to some clips. We're gonna go to your comments. We're gonna do plenty of analysis here. But before we get to all that talking in general about how the event went overall, I'm gonna give you a sense of what I think Bernie's chances of winning are. I'm gonna keep on updating it as we go for apparently 2 years straight. But I wanna actually cover the last segment of the town hall first, okay? So in the last segment of the CNN town hall on Bernie Sanders, a lot of issues came up, including the pharmaceutical companies. And again, we went to policy right away. And again, we went to the kind of talk that you would not normally hear from other candidates. And he said the pharmaceutical companies are among the most greedy in the country. So that's the kind of harsh language that you don't see from other Democratic candidates, though using the word greedy. He talked about how they made $50 billion in profits and that their executives are compensated at massive levels, while he said, you can't afford medicine. And he said, you know what? I'm not going to let them kill your wife or your kids. Wow. I mean, that is, I've never heard that kind of talk in my, nearly, oh my God, I'm so old, quarter of a century of covering politics, okay? From certainly not that kind of harsh talk from any Democrat. And so, and you could tell that people reacted very positively to it because we are dying out there. I mean, everybody on TV, again, is incredibly wealthy and they don't have these problems. So, but then the rest of the country, these are real problems. And he talked about, hey, my friends on the Republican side, they say they love free trade. Well, why don't we do free trade with Canada and bring in their drugs that are much cheaper when it's the same exact drugs?
Yep.
Same exact drugs. So that's the policy stuff. And then he was asked about several issues relating to African Americans and minorities in the country. One was about reparations, and so a little mixed bag there. His earlier answer was fantastic. We'll get to that in a sec. he explained that he's backing a specific legislation, as usual, very policy oriented. That's Representative Clyburn's legislation, and he talked about the childhood poverty rate for African Americans being 30% in this country, which is unbelievable. That's not the kind of levels you see in other developed countries, and it's because there's a great disparity in how we treat race in this country. But he did not answer whether he would do reparations. Now, he said, look, it depends on what you mean by reparations, which is a fair point, but he did evade the question several times. Yeah. Were any of you concerned that he evaded the question or no?
I didn't read it that way. I think that, if you say I support reparations, you're making a strong statement, one that I would agree with, but he wants to make sure that this was my read. He wants to agree to the terms. He wants to know exactly what that means.
Right.
And if that's not being defined up on stage and you don't know exactly what they're talking about, I think to take a strong stance like that could come to bite you later.
I think he hasn't thought it through, and it was clear that he hadn't thought it through, and he needed to have, I would say it was a missed opportunity to talk about the legacy of slavery in the United States and what that's meant for the African American community, how the Reconstruction isn't actually done, how we need more, a new Reconstruction. You want a new Green Deal? Let's have a new Reconstruction. Like it was a missed opportunity to talk about his work with the Civil Rights Movement and his work with Reverend William Barber of the Moral Mondays and the anti-poverty campaign, Poor People's Campaign. Thank you, Francesca. And so going there and then being like, if these things are reparations, then yes, I'm on board with reparations. But yeah, it was a little bit of it was a total missed opportunity to actually get real about what he is doing.
I think I wouldn't even describe it as evading the question. I thought he was kind of combative towards the question. I agree that maybe it's that he hasn't done much thinking about it, but I would say you should have
think
by now.
Think about it. Yeah.
Like you're not going to skate by without it. And the thing is, people will define it in different ways, but largely we understand what the idea is. It's a policy to alleviate structural inequalities that is not a means-tested, race-blind policy. It is a policy that is open to a group of people, not just a class of people. And look, if he disagrees with that, that's fine. There's massive disagreement about whether that is the better road to go or something that is race blind but lifts up everyone at the bottom. People believe those different things, but you should be willing to stand by that. And I didn't find the answer of, well, what do you mean by reparations? What do you mean by Medicare for all? He has a definition for it that he provides. What do you mean for a Green New Deal? He provides a definition for it. So you can do that. I think that he needs to have a better answer for the next time that comes up. And knowing that it probably would, because his stance in 2016 on reparations has been going around for the past 2 weeks or so.
Yeah, and I largely agree with you guys that and I was going to use the example of democratic socialism. When somebody asked him, hey, would you make this a socialist country? He had an answer that was very ready. He said, look, we're talking about democratic socialism, and let me explain to you what that means. So he should do likewise on reparations. I don't know if he's worried that it's just about the headlines. The headline is either you're for reparations or you're not for reparations, and both of those have electoral consequences. And most people don't read the articles and they don't get into the nuance, but he does do nuance on every other issue. So I agree with all you guys that he should get better prepared for that and define what he means.
Racial justice, issues of racial justice in 2020, I don't see reparations being the main issue.
Yeah, well, so that's, I'm glad you brought that up.
Either in the primaries or in the general, yeah.
Yeah, and so that's why I actually think that there's two issues right now that I think are a little misleading, and I don't know if that's the right way of saying it. And there'll be plenty of disagreement about this, but deconstructing the wall, he was asked about that too. I find that to be a non-issue. We got to make sure people are getting healthcare in this country, and we're going to talk about the racial disparities that he brought up and that need to be addressed, etc. Bothering to do a pickaxe to the wall.
Let's throw more money at it. Like that sounds like a great idea.
Yeah,
let's throw money at deconstructing it, and come on, come on.
Right.
But
so
will we guard the wall from being defaced and pickaxed by the people? No.
Yeah.
That's a great.
If you want to take part of the wall, go ahead.
Yeah.
I'm not going to protect
that's better.
We were kidding around doing a play-by-play, saying maybe we bring Banksy or maybe Absent to go do some art on the wall, and that could be a fun use of it. But overall, it's a political gimmick, okay? And so now reparations are not gimmick, but it is a political way of framing the issue. What I mean by that is, honestly, I would have had a similar answer to Bernie, so I guess that's a failing of mine. But I'm not running for president. So, because I don't know what people mean by reparations. I could put my definition on it, and if I was running for president, I would, and Bernie should, right? But when some of the other candidates say they're for reparations, I'm like, okay, does that mean we're giving a check? How much is the check? Does it go to every African American? How African American do you have to be? These are complicated and interesting and important questions. So hence, in some ways, I don't mind Bernie saying, look, I'm gonna address the racial disparities we have right now, okay? If you're asking me what the size of the check is, right? Or if it's a check, I'm not sure I know the answer to that either. You see what I'm saying?
He could have also spun it though and said, to me, when you fix the education system, when you fix our healthcare system, when you invest in people and you give tuition-free college, you're gonna disproportionately help people of color in this country and the African American community, and the racial justice and economic justice go hand in hand. Like he's so not a politician, even though he's got the longest tenure of anyone running for president, right? Like. But he didn't spin it that way. Maybe he could.
Now, so to be fair to Bernie, in the earlier question, he did talk about a lot of those issues, including things that people don't almost never bring up. And honestly, we bring up on the show all the time, but it's frustrating to us that more Democratic politicians don't emphasize it. For example, the wealth disparity among black and white families in America. It's a 10-to-1 disparity. And that is the legacy of slavery and Jim Crow and all of those things that systematically beat down African Americans in this country for centuries. So it's not, reparations makes it seem like, hey, this is, I know in the conservative right wing mind, oh, they're gonna get a gift. It ain't a goddamn gift, okay? And the point is that we need to address those disparities that were created through that history. We need to address that history. And so he did a good job of outlining the policies in the earlier question when asked about civil rights, and talking about, again, infant mortality rate, redlining. He talked about an African-American businessman he talked to in Milwaukee. He's got a great business but can't get a loan. So those are the things, the issues that we need to address. I guess it sounds like we're saying he just needs to frame the answer on reparations a little bit better around those issues and policies.
And I think a lot of people will find convincing the idea that if we advance these fundamental changes to the economic policy of the US, that will inevitably help to eliminate or drastically reduce these inequalities. But that is never going to convince everyone, because one of the things that helps drive continued interest in various formulations of reparations is that there have been a lot of policies that hypothetically were race blind in theory, but in practice that's not how they ended up. And so we trust Bernie, we know that he means it, and that's the sort of policy that he would put forward. But there have been a lot of times where we've gone through this as a country, and that's not the way it actually worked.
So yeah, and fair enough, no question. And hence the better clarity, the more clarity, the better in a situation like that. Last thing that they talked about was Trump supporters. And he said, yeah, I think I can get a lot of the Trump supporters because they're suffering the same economic problems that we are, and they don't want out of control executive pay, and they're not in favor of big business, and they also want healthcare, et cetera. All that is good. He said, look, some of them are racist and sexist, but most of them are not. That might be controversial to some folks, and so there's been a long-running debate about whether the primary driver of Trump voters is racism, sexism, et cetera, or economic issues. So I turn to John Iadarola for the point that it is largely racism and sexism. So, because that's the point you've made many times on the show.
Well, I don't know what largely means. What does largely mean?
It's your job to frame it right, John.
I will say that my gut reaction when he said most of them are not, my reaction was, what does most mean? I don't know, maybe most. Because I would say that most Americans, whether they're hardcore conservatives or Trump supporters or not, have those sorts of inclinations. They may not act on them, they may not express them, they may not be conscious, but they exist. I think that it's represented quite well in what is driving. And by the way, I don't necessarily just mean whether you supported Trump versus Clinton. I mean more whether you supported Trump versus Jeb Bush or whoever, the other Republicans.
Who dog whistled the hardest.
Exactly, there were significant differences in the primary that made him more popular than other Republicans who ostensibly have similar economic policies.
Look, when you have a president who refers to immigration as an infestation and then literally rips children away from their families as they are seeking asylum in the United States, if you still support the president at this point after he's done all those things, well then yeah, that's the primary driver. I'm not having a conversation about it. But with that said, look, Bernie Sanders doesn't want to get involved in the divisive rhetoric. And so I don't know what he really believes, but what I know is that he doesn't want to resort to name calling of any kind, even if it's accurate in this case. So I think that's
of Trump voters.
Of Trump voters.
But he does on Trump.
But he does on Trump. He has no problem taking Trump to task. In this case, though, I think in his view, it only leads to more division if you just refer to all Trump supporters as racist. And I just want to also note, like, I feel like so far throughout the entire night, we've done a lot of nitpicking, right? Because when it comes to the heart of what he wants to do in the country, we agree with him. He's authentic about what he wants to do. He's not trying to hide it. He's not trying to, pull a fast one on the American people. And on one hand, I think a lot of the criticisms that are here right now are legitimate. But on the other hand, I'm very curious why other candidates haven't gotten a question about reparations.
Sure.
Right? Like Kamala Harris's town hall, like, did she get asked about reparations? No. What does she think about it, right?
No, I think that's why I felt like it was okay, there goes my ring.
That was fun.
I felt like
the ring's coming off.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's my Bernie promise ring. I felt like reparations was sort of like I don't know if the term is like shadow boxing or just kind of like it wasn't the right question to ask, especially around racial justice. It felt sort of out of left field, and I'm not saying
it felt like that for me, but I think it's a legitimate question to ask.
Like a trap.
But guys, just real quick. To be fair, it came up more recently, even more recently than Kamala Harris's town hall, because some of the other candidates came out in favor of it. That's why it might have bubbled up today in his town hall.
I will say though that his response around Trump voters and whether he would reach out to them and how he would reach out to them shows me two things. One, he's not a partisan hack at all. Like he really is an independent thinker. And I think that's important. And he disagrees with the premise that the country is divided, number one, which I personally agree with too, and he laid out why. He laid out the popular support for Medicare for all, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So that's really important, but he's not gonna just toe a line and I think that was really clear. And I also think that as a white man running in this primary, he is the one to be able to say some of these people are racist and sexist. And that if Kamala said that, she absolutely would get hounded much more than Bernie Sanders is. And I think he used that well. I mean, I think Clinton, one of the moments that I think from both the left and the right, when she said basket of deplorables, she got hounded. It's like, they are. I don't understand.
Totally.
We were the most right on in that moment.
Yeah, that was her one authentic moment. That was her one authentic moment. She pulled it back immediately.
So I think it was a perfect line walking of, I'm gonna say the R word, racist. I'm gonna say the sexism word, I'm gonna call them sexist, but then I'm gonna say that their better angels can be sort of, brought into this movement.
So to conclude that point in the discussion of this segment, I think that to tie all that together, when the woman asked a question before that about, well, the country seems to be more divided than ever. The Democratic Party is going more to the left, the Republican Party is going more to the right, but most Americans are in the middle. As Francesco pointed out, he said, no, I reject the framing. That's not true. In fact, most of the country believes in Medicare for all, taxing the rich, et cetera, and went through a litany of answers. And so I love that he rejected the framing. It's just, that is the framing of Washington, D.C. Most people in Washington are between the right wing and the left wing, right? But that is not where the country is. The country is smack dab in the middle of the left wing, based on polling on the issues, not based on what we want, based on reality and facts. And so, rejecting of that framing and putting it in his terms and fighting for progressive positions then goes to what Anna said. I don't want you to lose the main theme here as we've covered the night. It's our job to analyze all the different issues and all the different details of those issues. But overall, does anyone doubt that Bernie Sanders is the most progressive candidate? Does anyone doubt that he's authentic about that belief and that he will fight for those positions?
I don't know. I mean, Klobuchar really gives him a run for his money.
Klobuchar. So you might not want the most progressive candidate. For whatever reason, you might not want the toughest fighter. But if you do, and you watch this, whether you're knee deep in it or not knee deep in it, you might go, whoa, okay, now that guy's gonna fight.
What I find annoying though about the question of like whether he reaches out to Trump voters and whether he gets like hounded for that is that it's framed in the same way as like, this country is so divided. We're so, there's been big rifts and we're all in the middle and we all just want to come together in the middle. And then if he says he wants to reach out to Trump voters that he can get on certain policies, he gets like, oh, you want to reach out to the racists. And so it's like, he can't win on that issue because the only divisiveness that Sanders is actually putting out there is us versus the 1%, is us versus the top, and like, and that's dangerous to our political establishment. It's dangerous to capitalism. It's dangerous to the very networks that broadcast the town hall and the interests that buy ads on those platforms. So just to say, like, we need to make sure that they're called on that, like that they reframe it as soon as he answers it. That he would reach out. How dare you reach out?
Yeah,
right.
That's a really great point. And by the way, that conversation is never had on the right. I mean, when it comes to the right, there's never a conversation about what are you gonna do to reach out to voters on the left. It's always, hey, if you're on the left, what are you gonna do to appease those on the right? Not a damn thing, right? We're gonna do what we know the majority of the country cares about, and we're gonna look out for economic justice, we're gonna look out for healthcare, we're gonna look out for the issues that we're all actually very, very much united on. That should be the answer, period.
And I think, I hope that this isn't a thing that people are thinking about a lot, but I know that some people have concerns. They're not necessarily supporters of Bernie Sanders, but there are people who are like, well, he was a real fighter in 2016 and everything, but he was kind of old then, and now he's a couple years older. Is he really gonna have it? He's gonna be able to do all that campaigning and everything? Like,
He's got more energy than I do. Let's keep it real.
I wouldn't have been able to maintain that for 90 minutes. Like he was the same as he was the last time around.
He must be taking some of those Alex Jones vitamins.
Exactly. Disaster pills.
Those vitality pills.
Two.
I know, right? Don't take them, Bernie. Don't take them.
Okay. All right. I'm just going to read a couple comments to you guys, and then I'm going to hand it off to Anna because she's got a bunch of clips that she wants to run through real quick. Secular Talk tweeted in, that's Kyle Kalinske, of course. It's always funny when Bernie Sanders is attacked for not being a Democrat. Both parties are despised by Americans, so it's like you're doing a free advertising for Bernie when you say that. LOL. Okay. Cynthia in our members section says, I found TYT because they were the only ones covering an early Bernie event in 2015. Been a member ever since.
Nice.
That's awesome. Thank you. And Dina Lockett says that she would be an independent, except the only reason I did not register independent is because I wanted to have the right to vote in primaries. Right. And so that is actually Bernie Sanders pulling a lot of people into the Democratic Party who were independent to begin with.
Just last time.
Yes.
Or just not registered active participants in American politics.
Yes, and Cyfox says that answer on tax returns could raise some questions, but I understand him. So that was a legitimate question that I said in our play-by-play from Wolf Blitzer, which doesn't happen often. But he has not released his tax returns. It is weird.
He has released some. Not the 10 years going back, but like 2 years ago he released a year or something like that.
Yeah. It's still weird, and I get that no matter what's in the tax returns, they're gonna pick it apart and attack him because they've already attacked his wife on issues like that. So I'm sure that that's a concern for him. But especially with Trump not releasing his tax returns, it's not negotiable. So you have to do it.
Right.
And you knew you were gonna run for president for quite some time, is my guess. Let's get to it on that one.
Yeah, and why wait? Just do it now.
Yeah. Okay, Anna, you take it away. You got this too.
Yeah. So I want to do
up at the top.
I requested some videos from our team. I have a printout of it.
Okay, she has it, everybody. Yeah. She has it.
All right, our wonderful team has grabbed some video clips that I requested. So let's go through them and kind of talk them through. So. During the town hall with CNN, Bernie Sanders was asked a question pertaining to gender. And this is an important question for him to answer and to get, because of course there have been attempts to criticize him, smear him, whatever you want to call it, in regard to the way women were treated on his campaign. And so here it is, here's the whole exchange.
As we saw in the 2018 midterms, the Democratic Party has become more female, more racially diverse, and younger in age. How can a voter like me feel confident in your ability to represent the party?
I am enormously proud of the fact that we have the most diverse, progressive freshman class in the history of the United States Congress. And you know what I did in 2016 and in 2018? I ran all over this country to try to make that happen. All right, so when you talk about the political revolution, you're talking about two things. Number one are the ideas that we are fighting for. An economy that works for all, not just the 1%. But the second point that I have made over and over again is we're not going to be able to implement a progressive agenda unless millions more people get involved in the political process. So I am delighted. We started an organization called Our Revolution. I think Nina Turner is here. You know what the purpose of Our Revolution was about? Is precisely to bring young people into the political process.
So I'm glad he was asked that question. We'll have a quick discussion about how you guys felt he answered it. But before we do so, I'm gonna go on a little bit of a rant, okay? So please indulge me here. Okay, I like to smoke weed and watch old political videos. That's what I do because I'm crazy. So I'll watch old debates.
You don't know how to relax.
I know, I'm crazy. So after a long day of politics, I go home and
old, but like how old are we talking?
Super old, and I'm about to prove it to you in just a second. So I was watching old Bernie videos, and he's had a long political career. You know, he had his mayoral address back in 1985, a year before I was born. And his speeches are incredible because of a common pattern, and that pattern is consistency. He has fought for the same thing since the very beginning of his political career. Now, I came across a video from 1994 that I hadn't seen before. And he is specifically addressing the issue of women who are victimized by domestic violence. Again, this is a video from 1994. I'm gonna show it to you, and then I'm gonna talk about these nonsense efforts to smear Bernie Sanders as a misogynist. Take a look.
It is disturbing that the death of Nicole Simpson, a tragedy affecting the rich and the famous, should be necessary to force us to take notice of the horror of domestic violence. Mr. Speaker, 80% of homicides in Vermont involve domestic partners or family members. All of the 6 women slain in Vermont during 1993 died at the hands of an intimate partner or a family member. Nationally, 3 out of every 10 women who are victims of homicide were murdered by a spouse or an intimate partner, and every 15 seconds, a woman is battered by her husband or a boyfriend. I have a number of serious problems with the crime bill, but one part of it that I vigorously support is the Violence Against Women Act. We urgently need the $1.8 billion in this bill to combat the epidemic of violence against women on the streets and in the homes of America.
Look, my argument about every politician, every candidate that's running is please, I beg of you, do not buy anyone's narrative. Don't buy the mainstream media's narrative. Hell, don't even buy our narrative, okay? Please be an advocate for yourself and look into the actual voting record and the background of every single candidate. That is far more important than any type of narrative that you're gonna hear from any talking head or pundit or whatever, right? So look, there were issues in his campaign and he was unaware of those issues, and his initial response maybe should have been better, right? But he has addressed it, he has put in safeguards and a process in which he's going to fix it moving forward with this new campaign, and I think that's important. But these attempts to smear him, these attempts to exploit the Me Too movement to smear him as some sort of misogynist or sexist is absolutely ridiculous, and it makes me sick, because really that's all it is. It's all about using women who have been preyed upon, who had been vulnerable in the past, using their stories and exploiting it to paint a picture of Bernie Sanders that simply is not true. That is my perspective of it. But again, don't believe me, don't buy my narrative, do your own research, be an advocate for yourself.
So before we get to Francesca, I'm very curious what you think, because I remember you said something during the play-by-play about that he didn't address women as much as youth in that answer. I'm gonna lighten it up a little bit as opposed to lighting it up, Anna.
Sorry.
Okay, and I like the new thing that Anna's discovered. It was Blazing Saddles back in the day from Mel Brooks. She's doing Blazing Sanders. You blaze and watch old Bernie Sanders clips.
I love that.
Okay, but yeah, look, it was an issue that is brought up every time in regards to him. One of the points I made earlier when the New York Times first came out with that story is, I'm afraid that that level of sexism existed in almost every campaign, but we just didn't hear about it from the other campaigns. And if it did happen on the Hillary Clinton campaign, which also had thousands and thousands of volunteers and staffers, etc., I don't think that would have necessarily been Hillary Clinton's fault. If you heard about it and didn't do anything about it, that would be unacceptable. It also, but I like that he put in better safeguards. And should he have put in better safeguards earlier? Yes, so should every other campaign. So I think that painting it as uniquely a problem for him is deeply misleading. But it should be addressed. So Francesca,
I mean, I think his answer was insufficient. And again, with Bernie, what he does a lot is he doesn't get high and go back into his vault and look at like how he supported the Violence Against Women Act and how he's been was arrested for civil rights. Like, I think that he needs to, when it comes to racial justice and women's rights, he needs to be as concrete as he is on economic policy. And so he needed to talk about like the Equal Rights Amendment. He needs to talk about the Violence Against Women Act, which I think is lapsed. Like, I don't know if we've re-signed it.
Yeah, it did. It expired.
It expired, and it's gotten very little press. He should talk about reproductive rights and all the things that he's going to do to protect them. And I think that would go a long way for getting people who, it's fine if that is your issue, whether you are a woman or not, but like if that is your number one issue is women's rights, and it really should be one of our top three, whatevs, but like say that,
Yeah, I agree with you. And look, this is the issue. I guess you can call it a flaw with the way that he campaigns. He's so laser focused on economic injustices, and I think in his mind, and I think this is true, alleviating or solving that problem will lead to better equality for all disenfranchised communities. But he's so laser focused on that I think that he sometimes forgets to focus a little more on the other issues as well.
Right.
And I mean, we all have our passions, right? So for Cenk, it's getting money out of politics. He'll light the room up when it comes to that issue. My passion, even though I am also very much concerned about that issue, that's not the issue that I'm most passionate about. So I might get fired up about something completely different. Maybe housing, for instance. Cenk is not as passionate about housing. He's not passionate about it almost at all. So like I might light the room up about that. But look, we're not running for president, Bernie is. And right now we're dealing with these very real social issues, and he needs to do a better job in showing that he would be a fighter to find solutions for that.
And the media has to do a better job of holding every candidate accountable rather than just Bernie.
I mean, it also didn't look good. I'm just gonna say, like, Bernie is so on brand in this town hall. He is so Bernie. Yes, he combed his hair, but he didn't come back with like a whole new like, hello, my name is Bernard and I am running for president. Like there was
Thank God he didn't. Yeah.
There was no makeover. And I think especially, again, I think a little more centrist, a little more, whatever, capital D Democrats want to see polish, and for sure pundits want to see polish, and he's not giving them any, and like, how he talks is yelling, and so he was yelling at a young woman of color. Like the optics are not good, and so someone needs to be like, hey, when it's like a white guy, yell. But if it's like, if it's a woman or a person of color, like take it down, because like you at the end of the day are kind of like a yelly white guy, and that is his brand. But for example, and it really, I mean, when I was so annoyed at the 2016 the primary debates was when people accused him of being sexist because he interrupted Clinton once, and he was, animated, and it's like, that's not sexism, I'm sorry, and I know it feels, I think we all get a little prickly when we hear like, an older white guy just kind of yelling at us. It's like, but the message is so there. So You know,
yeah. I totally understand what you're saying. In fact, and there was another question that an African American guy asked about African American issues, and he said, instead of saying, "Hey, thank you for your question. I understand your concerns, but let me agree and disagree in parts." You know, he came in with, "I reject the premise of your first question," right? Which he was right to reject the premise of. The premise was that he didn't help Hillary Clinton enough. He's like, "I did 39 rallies for her. I gave everything I had." So, but there. You build up the decibel level a little later, but it's both things that are true, Francesca, but also the fact that he's unvarnished is kind of what people like about him.
Yeah. Sure.
And so hence you got to live with the downside.
But you know Dorothy, when Dorothy goes to Emerald City and she gets like her nails done and she gets her hair did and she comes out, she's the same Dorothy, but she's a little bit like primer and a little refreshened. I think Bernie needs a little bit of that. It's not aesthetic, but it's just.
I hear what you're saying.
They did a lot of coke on that set. That helps.
And there's a lot of coke in Emerald City.
That's what I've heard. So the thing that's frustrating to me is we already saw like a month or two before he announced, and we will see from now until whatever happens, that there are going to be some people who are going to try to go toe-to-toe with him on policy. Elizabeth Warren, maybe a few others. And then there's some other people that are trying to co-opt just enough of his platform while hoping that they can disqualify him as a candidate for one of these reasons. And the thing is, like, the reparations response I thought was a flub. He could have done a better job there. But the question about the sexism on his campaign, it feels to me like when Republicans are disingenuous about sexual harassment and sexual assault. It feels like someone using the issue because I always want them to go a little bit farther. So this happened on your campaign. A woman was sexually harassed. Now talk. Well, but go a little bit farther. What are you saying he should have done with a campaign of literally thousands of people? Hypothetically, watch them all at all times? I mean, let's keep it real. You know why a woman was sexually harassed on Bernie Sanders' campaign? Because in America, men sexually harass women all the time on every campaign, in every environment, in every walk of life, and all across the country. So as you said, it definitely happened on Clinton's campaign and Trump's campaign, and Rick Santorum was involved in all of them. Now, if he had found out about it, and if he had done nothing or protected the guy or told her to go buzz off, okay, that's a big issue. But simply because it existed.
And he didn't know about it.
And so I don't understand what you are saying he should have done. Now, what he did do once he found out is exactly what we should want. He set up, as he puts it, the most stringent standards that no other campaign had at that time. Many campaigns, perhaps all other campaigns, don't have today. So according to that standard, you're more likely to be sexually harassed on other campaigns currently. So will people ask those candidates?
She asked,
why haven't
can
you
I trust
matched
you?
Bernie?
Can I trust you? And I feel like, again, back to the little tender side of Bernie that I think he needs to conjure up. He needs to remember that he is still one of the most, if not the most popular politician in America. And especially with young people, and I'm glad that he named that when it came to millennials and people of color, he did actually tie and or potentially beat out Clinton in the primary. But there needs to be more of an understanding. Can I trust you? This is a young woman of color asking if she can trust you. Yes, you can trust me.
If the question is, can I trust you going forward? And if you're saying both pragmatically and in terms of your communication, you should make sure that they understand where your priorities lie, that's totally fine. But to say that my trust should necessarily have been shook by an incident that happened on the campaign,
but then it's
and nothing you can do.
It's defensiveness. He needs to not, what are you gonna, oh, that's not true. I mean, and I think on some of them it's good, on some of the like, I disagree with the premise that he didn't campaign in 39 cities or whatever. That's good, but like, you can't contest, like what was I supposed to do? That's very Trumpian if he did that, right?
He has to be more
But let's be clear, he didn't, that's not the way he answered the question. He didn't say, what was I supposed to do?
No, not at all.
But I do agree in that, his initial reaction or initial statement following news that sexual harassment had occurred on his campaign was not a sufficient answer, and that is legitimate criticism. But to paint him as a misogynist simply because of that, or to make it seem as though he's somehow uniquely terrible to women is ridiculous. And that's the thing that's been bothering me, because what I've been seeing over and over again, not just with Bernie Sanders, but in the world of politics overall, is the opposition exploiting the Me Too movement for political gain and political reasons. And it's disgusting, and it makes me sick to my stomach every time I see it.
And as a comparison, like Like, look at Trump, and I don't even mean the most obvious areas in this case that he's one of the worst guys that, grab him by the and all that. And the fact that apparently, as of today, he might have also sexually assaulted a woman during his campaign. But like, look what he did with Corey Lewandowski and Rob Porter, like going out of his way to protect these people. Look at with what was the information about the child trafficking ring that just came out, and his response is, well, that was a long time ago when finding out that they had raped children who were in sexual slavery. Like
his current labor secretary
protected him,
Alexander Acosta, who was the prosecutor in the Jeffrey Epstein case. Helped with a non-prosecution agreement.
Yeah.
He worked with Epstein's lawyer. This is Trump's current labor secretary. His current labor secretary.
That is
that was
the
a long time
lowest
ago.
bar. We all know this is like the lowest bar.
I know, but what I'm saying is that I feel like the media is trying to create a wash. They're both really
No,
suspect.
I know, I can't. It drives me crazy.
Sure,
okay, we have more videos to get to, so let's get to that. So one of my favorite moments had to do with a question regarding how Bernie Sanders plans to fight Trump. So if he makes it to the general election, what's his style? How is he gonna, get the knuckles ready? How is he gonna fight? So here's what he had to say.
If you're the Democratic presidential nominee and you're on the debate stage with President Trump, how will you engage with him?
Well, we'll bring a lie detector along. And every time he lies, it goes beep. That would be the first thing. But I think the fraud that Trump is, the pathological liar that he is, has to be exposed. So we are going to hold him accountable for what he said and for what he did. He said he was going to provide health care to everybody. Then he proposes to throw 32 million people off the health care that they have. He said, you all remember, he said, I'm a different type of Republican. I'm not going to cut Social Security, Medicare, and Medicaid. And he brings forward a budget that does just that.
So I liked his lie detector answer. It seemed to get the crowd riled up. We got excited when he said that.
It was an Ojeda-like answer.
It was. That's why I liked it.
Yeah.
And there was a little bit of a difference in the way Bernie Sanders handled himself in this town hall, in that he felt a little more comfortable trolling. Did you guys notice that? And I liked it.
Mostly with Wolf. More
Yes. In fact, we have an example of him trolling Wolf. It happened throughout the town hall, and I actually want to toss that video right now. Let's take a quick look at that.
The answer, in fact, is to understand that a higher education today is the equivalent of what a high school education was 40 or 50 years ago. And that means we make public colleges and universities tuition free, and we substantially lower the outrageous levels of student debt. And then Wolf is gonna ask me in 3 minutes, how are we gonna pay for that? Yes, Wolf?
Go ahead.
All right. And we're gonna pay for that by a tax on Wall Street speculation. That's how we do it, and that covers that. Now, I found it interesting that last year, many of my conservative friends didn't bother to ask Donald Trump how he would pay for $1 trillion in tax breaks to the 1% and private corporations. And if we can give $1 trillion in tax breaks to people who don't need it, we can make public colleges and universities tuition free all over this country.
So I can't tell with Wolf Blitzer if he's got a dry sense of humor or no sense of humor.
No sense of humor.
And he's like, Wolf is gonna ask me in 3 minutes how I'm gonna pay for it. Wolf's like, go ahead.
Yeah, it's very unclear. It's like, is he a robot or not? Like it's like, what's the test where you test if robots are actually human? There's the Turing test. I feel like,
I'd love to give him that one.
Yeah, Blitzer is right on that cusp.
He like, there was also this one moment in the town hall where Bernie was giving an answer to something, and he's like, during this one debate, I don't remember if it was you, Wolf, on CNN, or if it was CBS, like same shit.
All your little shows.
Yeah, there was a lot of those little moments throughout the town hall that I personally enjoyed, but I'd like to think that Wolf Blitzer was a little annoyed with Bernie, but I'm reading too much into it. I have no idea.
I think he was annoyed before the town hall started.
Probably.
I think he's generally annoyed. Another thing that's frustrating to me, there are these, like for instance, you'll knock down a myth and then they just keep going with it, and so you have to do it all the time. It gets really annoying as a person who does the news. But one thing is this thing where progressive policies need to be paid for. Tax cuts are on the House. Like we get that. We've been talking about that for a long time. He's bringing it up openly. I feel like AOC talks about it a lot. I don't really feel like it matters to those hosts though. I don't feel like there's any headway that like Jake Tapper or Chuck Todd are like, you know, it is odd that we only ask that question when it comes to these things. And I wonder, is there, like, it's a meme now. Like, at what point does it become embarrassing for them to continue with this framework that they conduct interviews with, depending on whether you're on the left or the right?
And look, I think that question is that's a totally fine question to ask. I think people want to know how you're going to pay for it. But I think the intentions and the tone in which that question is asked is everything. And so when they ask Bernie that question, how are you going to pay for it? How are you going to pay for it? They've already been doing newscasts where they make it seem as though this is unattainable, this is pie in the sky, this is not something that we could ever do, right? In fact, oh my God, it's gonna cost you so much money. Your entire income is gonna be taxed at 70 to 80%. We're gonna be like Venezuela. Like they do that fear mongering and prime the audience. And then when they ask that question, it's not because they genuinely wanna know or they wanna give them a chance to explain the policy. They want to,
it's a gotcha question.
It's a gotcha question, yeah. But I like that he comes correct and he's prepared and he knows how. And we're gonna show you the video of how he's gonna pay for things in just a minute. But Cenk.
Yeah, it's just one thing that ties both what John and Anna said was, so they did that thing about, the Koch brothers do this study and it says that Medicare for All costs $32 trillion. But even within the study, they explained that if you actually just pay the Medicare rates, it'll actually save the country overall $2 trillion. So it'll save $34 trillion. So, and obviously the difference between 34 and 32 is the $2 trillion that we would save. And so in the beginning, Jake Tapper does this snarky video. AP did a story about, you see this? It costs $32 trillion. And facts matter, progressives, right? And progressives pointed out, hey, wait a minute, that's a Koch brothers study. And it actually saves us money. And then Associated Press seemed to even respond to our video correcting them on it. And they said, okay, fine. The Koch brothers did finance that particular portion of that university that financed that study. And yes, if you do, and this is like right in the middle. And there's one quick sentence or paragraph about, yes, if you do pay Medicare rates, which is what you would do under Medicare for All, that it would save money, but still a lot of money. I don't know how you're gonna pay for that, and taxes would have to increase, and yada yada. So in other words, we were right. But to John's point, they've all forgotten that already. So now every article I read does not mention that it's a Koch study, does not mention that even according to that study you save money, does not mention that that we pay twice as much as every other developed country in the world on healthcare. And it just completely not only loses the context, which makes you question their journalism, but is honestly at that point, without that context, massively tilted towards the right-wing position.
Absolutely, because that is, and I go back to the safer position for money. And I think, unfortunately, we're staring down the reality that authoritarianism and xenophobia and building a wall on the US-Mexico border is safer for money than providing healthcare for all people. And that is a hard pill to swallow as someone who believes in democracy and wants to love this country more than I already do. But you see the way, I can't get over, I like Jake Tapper. I think he's a good guy.
Wrong.
But I can't get over.
Sometimes he's better than the rest.
I can't get over seeing when he asked every single Republican on that stage in 2016, do you agree with Donald Trump's plan to build a wall? How would you address immigration? Do you agree with every single Republican was asked vis-a-vis the wall?
Right.
This completely harebrained, ridiculous idea, which is massively over. I mean, like, is the money going to come from? And so, like, I can't go back and trust, and I will always count on that hypocrisy to be there, because democratic socialism somehow is still way scarier than electing a Trump. Trump.
Yeah, that's a good point. And they allowed Trump to frame every part of that election. And when I say they, I mean CNN specifically.
Yeah.
And I'm glad that they've found solutions to those mistakes, like hiring a GOP hack who worked for Jeff Sessions to make editorial decisions in the upcoming election.
Yeah.
Anyway, let's go to what I would argue is one of Bernie Sanders' stronger answers, and it has to do with how he would pay for some of these proposals. As always, super unapologetic. Video 1.
But at a time when the people on top have so much, while the middle class shrinks and we have so many people living in poverty, if your question is, am I going to demand that the wealthy and large corporations start paying their fair share of taxes? Damn right, I will. All right? And let me give you, people say, where are you going to get the money? Where are you going to get the money? Amazon, owned by the wealthiest guy in the world, made $5 billion last year in profits. Anyone here know how much they paid in taxes? That's right. That's where we're going to begin getting the money.
That's where we're going to begin getting the monne
What if he shops with Amazon? What are our thoughts? Does Jane have a Prime account? Like,
I would be shocked. I mean, not because he has some strong principle against buying anything on Amazon. I just don't see him ever online shopping.
Or online.
No, I can imagine him online, but I don't know. Online, I don't really see him as much of a shopper.
Yeah, he goes to the country store.
Because you have to support the small businesses in your community. Okay, what's being done to them is totally unfair.
Also Costco. We know he loves him some Costco. And really, Kirkland brand is all you need when you're Bernie Sanders. They've got really everything.
Can I just say,
some great suits.
Kirkland brand has some really good jammies. They really do.
They do.
All my jammies are from Kirkland.
Okay,
I don't know.
And pistachios.
Yes, in bulk.
Yeah.
Anyway, sorry, this is not an ad for Costco. My bad.
It's not an ad for Costco.
But to the point you guys are making, you're allowed to shop on Amazon and still demand that they pay taxes.
Yeah.
Those are not mutually exclusive. I have an iPhone. I shop on Amazon. And I would like Apple and Amazon to pay a lot of taxes.
Yes.
Yeah, and let me just add, considering the news of the day, you were allowed to give speeches advocating for planet-wide structural response to climate change without dragging yourself thousands of miles on the ground to get there.
On a wagon.
Yeah.
Yeah. One more video?
Sure.
All right, so I wanna just pivot to a difficult question that Bernie Sanders was asked. I don't know how I would handle this question, and it's on Venezuela. So here you go, let's take a look.
There are a lot of awful things happening in the world. And what's going on in Venezuela is terrible. Their economy is a disaster. People are living in hunger and in fear. And I am very fearful of the United States continuing to do what it has done in the past. As you know, or may know, the United States overthrew a democratically elected government in Chile and in Brazil and in Guatemala and in other countries around the world. So as someone who fervently believes in human rights and democracy, we have got to do everything that we can. But I think sometimes you have unintended consequences when a powerful nation goes in and tells people who their government will be. So my view is that whether it is Saudi Arabia, which is a despotic regime, or whether it is Venezuela, I think we have got to do everything that we can to create a democratic climate. But I do not believe in US military intervention in those countries.
Well, Anna, you said you're not sure how you would have answered that. I think that I probably would have answered it like that.
Yeah, you know what, now that I think about it, yes, but I personally would have added our intentions for wanting regime change in Venezuela, which is of course oil, right?
Yeah.
Like that's clear. I mean, why is it that we want to, do regime change in Venezuela while pretending like we care about the humanitarian crisis? Simultaneously, we're involved in aiding and abetting a humanitarian crisis led by Saudi Arabia in Yemen. So you can't, as the US government can't BS their way into regime change in Venezuela, at least for the Americans who are paying attention. We know what they're really about, right?
Yes, I think you're right. It was. I mean, he was walking a fine line there, so maybe he'll get to that in terms of distinguishing himself from other primary candidates and other Democrats. But taking his analysis of the oil and gas lobby internationally and understanding, and he understands, he knows why we've intervened, and he knows that it's to make those countries safe for American business, and it's basically part and parcel of the critiques he has already.
Right.
So I think he has room to grow on that. I think for me that answer, it keeps going, and the best part of it is we need to support the Venezuelan people.
Yes.
In terms of democratically changing their country. And I know that what the people want is always being characterized by others who aren't in Venezuela. And I think even the people in Venezuela, like we see them as a homogenous group. Okay, just the people who are on Twitter are the real Venezuelans. Well, not everyone has a data plan and a cell phone in Venezuela and is on Twitter. So I think that is what we have to always remember is like, what is the sovereignty of the people of themselves? And it doesn't matter what I think about it. I wanna be able to support democratic movements there, not necessarily through USAID.
Yeah. But I'll tell you, if he had said that part of the reason we were interested in regime change in Venezuela is the oil, I guarantee you that the mainstream media would have jumped all over him and called him a conspiracy theorist, even though John Bolton just admitted on Fox News that it's for the oil.
Literally just
all the time talks about it.
The fact that it's Trump that's pushing for it means that there's like a 2% chance that maybe they would pin it all on Trump, but generally they would fall in line that way. That was actually one of my favorite responses because of how, like, while I love a good Bernie, like fire up, get us going, get us pounding the table answer, not everything, like I'm not terrified of nuance or complexity, and not every response do you get to take one turn and you are a perfect, pure person who is totally in tune with the people and everything that is good in the world, and the other turn is that you're evil. Sometimes you pursue your values with a policy that doesn't give you all of what you value. And the thing is, like, I'm sure one of the reasons it seems a little bit difficult and you can see in his face is working out is that I'm sure his heart breaks for the people of Venezuela, but he also knows that were we to go in there, it would be an absolute disaster.
That's right.
Objectively on its own terms and certainly in the historical context.
You know why it would be a disaster? Because we wouldn't actually be going in there to look out for the best interests of the people of Venezuela. We would be going in there to look out for the best interests of US businesses. See, that's why, like, I mean, look, you could say, oh, regime change has unintended consequences. No, regime change has intended consequences.
But it also has unintended consequences. And the thing is, I think even if it was Bernie riding, an M4A1 across the border in Venezuela to save the people, doesn't care about oil. In fact, he's gonna burn down all the derricks. Lots of people would suffer as a result of that. And the thing is, like, everybody wants the pure answer, and the pure answer doesn't necessarily, you don't always get to be the perfect 100% awesome progressive person. Sometimes, like for instance, like I think our presence in Syria in many ways, perhaps most ways, was an absolute disaster that caused the deaths of tons and tons of civilians. And so I don't want us there. I don't want us controlling their future, but I also know that us not being there means that God knows what might happen. It looks like in the end we're actually going to be there because Trump keeps increasing the number of troops that are gonna stay. But you get what I'm saying. Sometimes you pursue a policy and you don't get to be the perfect pure person afterward. And I respect that he stuck to his guns, even though you could see in his heart that his values, like he was torn.
Right, but I mean the conditions are not such where we can actually, I mean, what would we do? Like strengthen the OEA, strengthen the UN, have some sort of process. But the US has been one of the biggest impediments to having an honest process around, or basically reeling back in imperialist ventures like the war in Iraq, right? Stuff, I mean, I call it imperialism, but because it's for oil, et cetera, and control. So we've obliterated our international bodies. We can't just suddenly pretend like they exist. And ergo, Richard Branson on the Colombia-Venezuela border with Live Aid.
With a concert.
Is that happening?
Because that was gonna solve things.
Yeah.
It happened, and people, there was repression on various sides. I mean, specifically the Venezuelan police. The point is, also a horrible idea because it was a forcing aid through, which you knew was gonna lead. I mean, what happens often in Venezuela is basically opposing two sides, and they basically force a situation where people get hurt. And yeah, the Venezuelan police did open fire, and I'm not advocating that was a good thing. I'm just saying you put the whole situation into this, like, we're just gonna walk across the border with a bunch of aid. Like, no, you shouldn't do that, Richie.
And Branson also screwed up on because Guaido was there. Guaido came in at the end of the concert. Then you made it political, and so
Of course it was political.
Yeah, it's a terrible idea. Did you say that he would go in on M4A1? Okay, I don't know what that is, but I like that kind of talk.
Oh, actually, no. That's a misstatement. I was actually mixing up terms. As proud as I am of the knowledge I have of the military, I'm actually mixing things up. That was inaccurate.
Okay, because I'm like, wait, M4A is Medicare for all.
That's true.
And he would write in on that.
I got ahead of myself. The M4A1 is a rifle. I was thinking the M1 Abrams.
Okay,
Anyway,
that's right.
Most people probably didn't
Well, the
notice
Abrams tank is going to help us win in Iraq. That's what General McCaffrey said on NBC before the Iraq War. How'd that turn out? Anyway, and you'd be shocked to find out General McCaffrey worked for the people who created the Abrams tank.
Oh my God, does he know that?
Oh no, it was an innocent mistake. Anyways, so okay, that's all the videos.
Yeah.
All right, rock and roll, guys. Thank you for joining us. And I'm going to remind you guys of one last thing. Bernie Sanders is not our uncle. Okay, so if you
I'm from Connecticut, he could be.
Okay, maybe for you, but I'm pretty sure he's not my uncle.
He's many Jewish Americans' uncle, though. Wow,
yeah,
he
in
really,
a lot of ways,
he really is.
And so the reason I tell you that is if you see us and you think, well, man, they seem very complimentary of Bernie Sanders, we're just calling it like it is. We have no reason to support him anything other than policy, right? And so if he had shitty answers, we'd tell you he had shitty answers. And in fact, we might have even nitpicked some of his answers, as Anna pointed out earlier. And we got no dog in the fight in terms of the actual people, right?
Right.
But we do in terms of policy. So we're trying our best in calling it like it is. And it seems like overall, we liked a lot of those answers, okay? And likely you guys did too, but that's for you to decide.
Yeah.
Okay. All right, Francesca, thank you so much. Anna,
Thank you.
John, everybody check out Damage Report, No Filter, you get it. Okay, we'll see you guys tomorrow.